It's a story that I know is going to change some people in here. If there's anybody in your life who you seek a better relationship with, let me just get right to the point. Is there someone in here that you guys just can't see past? Is there just one person even, or maybe it's several people, who knows? But you just can't get past them. Like, you love God, you honor your family, but there's just these people that test you. You know what I mean? Maybe it's people in your childhood who just did you so wrong that you just can't see past them. And so I'm going to remove those people today by the grace of God. And you're going to be able to honor those people. And so I'm going to grab some water because I'm going to be a faucet here in a minute. Just letting you guys know, man, I'm transparent. So as a child, I had a stepfather named Benjamin. And Benjamin Sr., we'll call him, he was an outlaw biker. He was the sergeant of arms of a biker club up in Bellingham where I grew up. And back in the early 70s when I was a small child, bikers really were outlaws. And they really did, do some damage to people. And this guy was one of the worst of the worst. And I don't know how my mom found him or why. Well, I know why, because I'm standing here in front of you guys right now. That's why, right? So God saves us, but Satan always tries to kill us as children. I don't know if you guys ever think about that. But whatever happens to us as kids always shows up. It's where Satan works in us when we're older. If you saw porn when you were a kid, maybe just a little bit too young to understand or overcome it, and you fell into that trap, that's where the enemy works in us as we get older, right? That's where his foothold is. Unless you're just living the book of James or in the book of John and the truth sets you free and you're open enough to really talk to people about your sin. If you don't talk about it, you've created walls of Jericho around that sin. And the enemy will keep operating inside of you, right? Well, some of us got so damaged as kids, the enemy's got all kinds of footholds in us. And I think that those are the people like myself that God uses the most because we're the people that need to cling to him the tightest. You know what I mean? We're the ones that need him the most daily, sometimes hourly. And so, stepfather, and I had a few growing up, but he was a violent person. And I'm going to paint a picture of him. And some of you guys are going to start to feel emotions about him, and that's okay. Feel however you want. But, I got put in the hospital. My grandmother told me several times before the age of 5 years old because I was beaten and I had bones broken in my face and I had bruises. And he tried to kill my mother 4 times. Once she tried to shoot her. She beat the bullets out the door. I don't know how, but I know why, because I'm in front of you guys right here today. And so this guy, when I became saved, this guy was every single day of my childhood life I knew that the day I was old enough and savvy enough to carry a gun or learn how the human body worked enough that I could end a life, this guy was going to be gone. That's how serious. I don't know if any of you guys have anything that serious in your life, but I really wanted to kill this guy. I wanted to end him, you know what I mean? And the things he did to me, I still to this day do not understand. He would beat me so hard and so bad with a belt for wetting my bed that, I'd put my hands back there, so he'd turn the belt around and he'd start to whip me with the buckle end of it, and the buckle had a big hook on it. And I've still got scars, on the back of between my butt and my legs. I've still got those scars, where it would stick in me, and he would rip it out, and he would just stick it in me, you know what I mean? And he would just come in a drunken rage and just trash our whole house, and he would beat my mom, and I'm 4 years old, and I'd run down there, and I'd just give him everything I had. At 4 years old, it wasn't much, but it was everything I had. And he would just throw me from room to room, up and down, until I didn't move anymore. And then he'd do the same thing to my mom. And finally, one time, my mom left him, and she left him with a frying pan. She just took a cast iron to this guy, and then we were living in Walnut Creek, California. And she just packed, I remember she said, pack as much stuff, as many of your clothes in these 2 grocery bags. Back then they were the paper bags, you know. She just said, pack them as full as you can and we're out of here. We jumped in the car and we drove, and she was just scared the whole time, and I was freaked out. And we got back here and we were staying from house to house, and every single time someone knocked on the door, she'd say, go hide in the closet right now. Go to the closet, find somewhere to hide right now. Every time the door got knocked on. So I didn't see him again until I was 9 or 10 years old, and you know, he came around because my mom ended up having a son by him, which is my little brother, and my little brother Dave is, and so he came because he wanted to be a part of his life, and he was clean and sober at that time, but I hadn't forgiven him, to be honest with you, not when I was 9. But then as I got older, I realized, I mean, I was the kind of guy who, I mean, if you even looked at me wrong in high school, right after high school, I always had a chip on my shoulder. You know, the tough guy kind of becomes your identity, so you just hang on to it. And I was beating people up and learning how to fight. And when at 23, I read a book by Anthony Robbins, and it had such a profound thing. For me, it was profound. But, you know, you guys all probably are like, well, of course that's true, right? But in the book, he said, you know, you can feel however you want to feel. You get to choose moment by moment every day how you want to feel about things. And if you want to keep carrying stuff around. And so I thought that I'd forgiven this guy. And I did kind of. I'd kind of forgotten. I said, you know, I've been carrying that guy around my whole life. I'm just going to let him go and see where this gets me. And I kind of wanted to start building relationships and having real friends, and actually having a girlfriend. You know, a girlfriend who gave me the book, and she was like, you're so mad all the time. I just want you to have this book. And so I started turning my life around, and then I ran into Benjamin Sr. at my younger brother's wedding, and he came up to me and he said, hey, you know, I know I was a pretty bad dude back when you were a kid, and I just want to say I'm sorry. And I just looked him in the eye and I said, you know, I forgave you a long time ago. I had to, because you know, if I didn't, I was going to kill you. You know what I mean? And so he said, well, I guess thanks for that. You know, he's still just as ornery and crotchety as he ever was. But so then the very next day I had my first son. So this is all going on, you know, while I'm looking. I got a court case over my head. I've got some people that want to kill me that didn't feel like they finished the job. They knew my reputation, and they didn't want me to come after them. And so I had my son, and my son started growing up, and I'm like, you know, I'm getting saved. I'm like leading a couple small groups. Nobody really knows who I am. I'm just kind of this good-looking, well-spoken guy who's on fire for Jesus. That's all anybody ever really knew. Well, then my son turned about, I guess it was 2.5, maybe 3 years old, and we were playing in the bathtub together. And one of the things I'm kind of ashamed about, but I'm openly talking about now because the truth sets me free, is that when I was young and I'd wet my bed, I don't know why he did it, but there's a few times where he yanked me out of bed and he put me on the toilet and he just urinated on me. He put my wet underwear over my head and he just urinated on me. There's more. I mean, there's so much more, but that's just one of the things he did that I just grew up with so much shame and so much guilt and kind of fear. And, you know, those things, when those things happen to you, you don't really know how to process it. You just do. You know what I mean? And so I'm playing with my son, and he's taking a bath, and he grabs this squirt toy and he fills it up with water, and he's like squirting it on himself, and he grabs it and he squirts it over his head like this. And he kept on doing that. And I kept looking at my son. If you guys ever saw my son, he's like a mini me. He looks exactly like me. And you've seen my son before. And so, but I was looking at him, and I had this flashback because I was looking at me at the age that I was, and I love my kids so much I could eat them. I could just eat my kids. I love them so much. And so I'm looking at my son, and I'm seeing this, and I'm thinking, gosh, how could that guy do that stuff to me? And all these feelings started coming back inside of me. And I snapped. I had post-traumatic stress syndrome, and you know, this guy, like, everything about him came back into my mind. I started having nightmares, and my wife thought she'd married a psycho. I mean, she just was just like, who is this? First he gets saved, and he's all crazy about Jesus. Like, when I met her, I was like in the nightclub industry, and all these people like me, and I wore suits every day and had all this money. And then I get busted and poor, and then Then I get saved, and she's like, what? I'm like crazy for Jesus, and she's like, okay, cool. And then I like go back to this other person who's like angry and frustrated and feeling shame, and she's like, who in the heck is this guy? And as I came back, I moved back up to Bellingham, and you know, it's kind of funny, humility. I want to tell you, I'm going to interject. So anyway, I went back, you know, and now it was even more confusing, my hate and my anger, because here I love Christ, but there's still this guy, right, that's there, and that he, you know, he's just occupying my heart, and he's making me angry. And I mean, I'd be fighting with this guy in my mind, and my wife wouldn't even know what's going on, and she's like asking me about what I want for dinner, and I'm like, what? And she's like, it's okay, so I don't know what that was all about. And I'm like, gosh, I'm sorry, I was just fighting with this guy in my mind. I want to go confront him. You know, I don't know what that's going to do for me. Maybe it's going to make me more pissed. Maybe I'm just going to go to prison for murder instead of drug dealing. Who knows? And so, so then I get, then my father dies in my arms, diabetic shock, which I won't go too far into that story. You guys can figure that out. But I needed a pastor to do my wedding, and so I don't know if any of you guys know Bob Marvel from Cornwall Church up there. He's a long-haired biker pastor. So I was looking for a pastor that was going to fit with my dad, right? Because my dad was a biker too. And so I went to Bob, and I was like, oh, Bob, I need. He's like, you know, I've been hearing about this Jeff Fisher guy, and guy's just on fire for Christ and all that stuff. He goes, but I also got these other people who are like, oh, dude, that guy's, you know, I mean, he's left a trail of a wide swath of hurt people and females and all that stuff. Who are you? He said. And so I just told him my story, and we both just sat and we cried, and I just talked about how much I love the Lord and how I've been saved. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll do your dad's funeral if you'll do your testimony on Christmas Eve at Cornwall Church. This is in 2006, and I'd never told anybody in my church where I really came from or who I really was. Kind of was hiding that part of it. You know, you don't want people to find out who you really are, right? Yeah. So, yeah, that was the first time I told my testimony publicly, and I just got blessed by it. The Lord just opened up some stuff in my life, and I knew at that point that I was an evangelist at heart. And but another humility story I'm going to interject into this thing. When I came up here, you know, I kind of felt like I'd escaped a social class. You know, I mean, my family is very, very poor. Very, you know, I call them poor white trash. I claim white trash myself. You know, but we joke around about it. It's okay. And I remember one time we were here, and it was my first family reunion after I had my son. I mean, imagine having a kid and getting busted in the scene I was in. All right, I was like gaining a social disease down there. I mean, I had nobody would hang out with me, right? I just had a kid, you know, anyway, so all my friends kind of left me, and so I started hanging around my family a little bit, and I brought them on. I remember sitting in the swing one day, and I'm looking out across my family, and I'm like thinking to myself, how in the world, what am I doing back here? Like, that gal's been divorced 3 times, and this person has 2 or 3 kids by different dads, and this person's kicking heroin. I just sat there, and I just had this little self-righteous kind of a party. I never said it out loud, but I was thinking it about all these people, and I'm like, you know, my grandfather's on his second wife, and she's you know, wasted. And I'm just sitting there just begging on people, right? And the Lord just punched me in the chest, and he said, who are you? Who are you? The only reason you're alive today is because of my grace. It's the only reason why I let you take one more breath is because of me. It doesn't even have anything to do with you. You haven't done anything to deserve even being alive. Like, who are you? You know what I mean? And I started to get a picture of what humility was. You know what I mean? And I looked around, and he just said to me, he said, you're the worst one here. You have hurt more people. You've done more drugs. Who are you? Like, honestly, like, that's like, it wasn't audible, but like, I just got the picture. So, you know how the Lord does that sometimes? He just gives you just such a clear picture. And so, so back to my stepfather, you know, I'm sure some of you guys have got a feeling in your heart about this guy. Imagine if it was you growing up that way. or someone you love. Maybe it was, your kid. I mean, he was my stepfather. So my real father never knew about this guy, right? Well, then I get a call one day, and so my testimony is like flying around the country. I'm getting calls from pastors all over the place. Hey, can you come tell your testimony in my church? And I suddenly become this kind of speaker guy. And a guy calls me from Detroit. He says, hey, we're kind of related somehow. He says, will you come out? And he goes, I want to fly you out and would you give your testimony to my church? I got a Saturday night deal. I want you to speak out, and then I got for the youth, I got about 300 people, and then I got about 1,500 people that'll come and see you in the daytime on Sunday, and I'd just love to kind of meet you and hang out with you. And he said, no, we're kind of related. It's kind of a long story, but and so I flew out there, and his wife picked me up from the airport. I didn't really know what to expect, and then I got to his house, and when he opened up the door, I was looking at Benjamin Jr. And I looked right in the eyes and in the face of a man who looked exactly like the guy who had abused me as a child. And I couldn't believe it, because not only did he look just like him and he had the exact same name as him, but he was talking about Jesus, which was really confusing, because I had another one of those post-traumatic stress. I don't know if any of you guys ever felt that. That just, you got to have gone through something to go back to that something, right? But and I could smell, and he rides Harleys and choppers, and so I smelt the grease. As a kid, we always had a Harley part and parts all over the living room, and that's just, when you grow up a biker kid, that's just the way it is. And so here I'm looking at him, and I'm smelling, olfactory senses are the closest to your memory, right? And so I'm smelling this motorcycle grease and oil, and I'm like smelling Harleys, and I'm looking at this guy, and I'm just like going, wow, Lord, what are you doing with me right now? And I come in, and he's one of the most gracious pastors. He's like honestly one of the like coolest people. He's like one of my favorite people in the world now. We're actually pretty close friends. And he says, yeah, so how we're related is my dad and your mom, we were both born already, but my dad and my mom, or your mom and my dad, married after we were born, but then I never saw my dad for, I only got to know him like maybe the last couple of years. And, he lives out in Washington actually, and I go see him every once in a while. I'm just kind of repairing that relationship, and I knew, I'd heard your story from actually your younger brother, and, and I looked it up online and thought, gosh, what a cool thing it would be to meet you. And I was like, you have no freaking idea what I'm thinking about you right now. And so we're just kind of rolling through the weekend. He flew me out there a couple days early, and he's talking about the Lord. And he's like, got his theological, he's just dead on, and I'm just really appreciating my time with him. But got this storm going on inside of me, and all these memories coming back. And finally, he just sat me down in his office, and he said, what's going on with you anyways? It's like, there's just something a little left of center about you that I don't really get. And sometimes when you look at me, it's kind of like you're looking through me, like there's this dark thing going on inside of you. And I just said, man, I got to be honest with you. I don't know if you know about your dad. I mean, really about your dad? But I said, when I was a kid, your dad was not a good guy, and I don't know who he is now, or the guy you're trying to get to know, and I don't want to ruin that. But I said, he did some stuff to me, and it was still, I'm trying to get over it still. And he said, there's something about my dad that you probably don't know. He said, you have a younger brother named Dave, right? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, that's, my half-brother or whatever. And he said, well, when my father was about 7 years old, he had a younger brother named Dave that was about 6. And he said, when my dad was a little boy, he used to get beat so bad by his by his mother and stepfather that one time they were just beating the tar out of these two kids, and the youngest kid died of blunt head trauma an hour after their beating. And so by the time the police had gotten there, which I think they called the police late and it was a couple hours later, by the time the police had gotten there, these guys had coached Benjamin Sr. to tell the cops that he actually played with his own brother too hard. and that he had killed his own brother. So here's the story. I mean, as a guy, I'm just going to be honest with you. I got so flooded with compassion for that man. The same man that I had wanted to kill my entire life. Every living day I wanted to kill this guy. Right? But then the Lord showed me this guy the way he sees him. Because the Lord knows, and whoever it is in your life, I don't know who I'm speaking to today, but if there's a person in your life that you can't get past, you better look at him through Christ's eyes, because you don't know where that person has been. And you don't know what that person struggles with. You know what I mean? And so, and by the way, I mean, who are we? You know what I mean? Like, who are we? To think about that person and not honor that person the way Christ knows us. I mean, he knows everything that we've gone through. Because, and it helped me see people the way Christ sees people, because I honestly was having a hard time figuring out how I could be forgiven. I mean, you know, as a debt collector, I mean, I've boot-fed guys in their kitchen in front of their own little kids, with their kids hanging on to me and screaming, "Don't kick my daddy. What are you doing?" And they're the same kids that were me when I was 4 years old. So who are we? Like, we're nobody, right? The only reason any of us are here today is not by anything that we've done, but it's only by grace, right? It's only by the grace of God that we are allowed to take one single dang breath in this life. And so, you know, I've run into that guy, believe it or not, in church. And he still doesn't accept hugs, but I went up and I hugged him anyways. And I said, "Man, I don't know, Benjamin, that I love you, man. And I don't know how he takes it, honestly, but I really don't care. Because it was me that got changed. He might not ever change. I don't think he's saved today. I really don't. I pray every day that he does get saved. I want him to get saved. I want him to get saved. You know what I mean? Like, I want to honor him. And so, so what a story, huh? I mean, from the beginning, I mean, you feel one way about a guy, and then, you know, so I don't know who you're trying to get past. I don't know who that one person is for you. But does it really matter who they are to you? I mean, as Christians, doesn't it matter more who they are to our Father? Yes. That's what matters, right? So I'm gonna pray, and then you guys can close up the way you normally do. But oh, Father God, we love you and we praise you, and you are such a perfect God, and we are just so happy that you have grace. I just pray for every single man here. I pray for every heart in here, because that's how you're judging us, right, is by our heart. And it doesn't matter who we're talking about. It doesn't matter who we're thinking about. What matters is how we're talking about them. Because what comes out of the overflow of our heart is what comes out of our mouth. And so let it be praises for those people. And it's not even about those people. It's about us. We thank you, God. And I just pray for every man here, that whoever that one person is, or heck, maybe it's 10 people, Lord. But I just ask that you work in every man here, every ear that can hear me, Lord. I just ask that you'd release them and allow them to feel the way I feel and honor people. You know, you tell us to pray for our enemies. You tell us to give thanks in all things. You tell us not to be anxious or fear. I mean, it all fits together, and for your glory. It all comes together for the good of us, Lord, in your name. And we pray for these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Oh.